Charlie Montoya made some mistakes. I'll be the first one to admit that.
Yes, sir, there she goes.
The Blue Jays are back. The offense is back. Hello and welcome to episode 203 of section 138. The Blue Jays scored some runs. They scored more than 2 or 3 runs in a ball game. The first game of this series in St. Louis was absolutely brutal, but game 2, the Blue Jays score 8 runs. They rack up the tally against the St. Louis Cardinals. We have Vladimir Gurio Jr. hitting a home run. We have Danny Jansen hitting 2 home runs. We have 5 walks as a team. We have every sort of offense you could ever want or imagine, and the biggest offensive performance for the Blue Jays since opening weekend. Bryson, Jacob, how are you guys?
It is crazy that it's been that long. As much as it's not surprising because of the results, but doing good after today. I think today's game made this episode, or will make this episode, a lot easier to talk about, because the way it ended yesterday, just coming into today, it wasn't good. And if they managed to lose again tonight, I feel like it would have been a disaster for all 3 of us tonight. So a great win tonight offensively. Pitching was obviously there. It's going to make it a lot easier to talk about. And we have a lot of positives that we can take away as well from this game, which is going to be really good as the Jays continue their road trip.
Yeah, and also, like, this was a game, I think it's fair to say this is a game this team absolutely had to have. You don't want to go to LA. You don't want to face Shohei Ohtani on a losing streak. I mean, I'm not going to say that the team is 100% better now, but, you know, they're definitely doing well. Obviously, are doing well enough to win in this game. And I think the biggest takeaway that I have is this wasn't a situation where you absolutely need all of your key relievers. Like, obviously, everybody's key on this team, but you can throw in whoever you want, make those defensive replacements, just sit back, get a win. Now we'll see what Shohei Ohtani can, or if Shohei Ohtani can stop that offense on Thursday.
That's the bad news. The Blue Jays have the game of the month so far. And how do they get rewarded for it? They're going to Los Angeles and facing the one and only Shohei Ohtani. But there are worse situations to be in if you're the Blue Jays. They could be coming off a 2-run game and going to Los Angeles and facing Shohei Ohtani. At least they are coming in relatively hot, or hotter than they have been over the last 2 to 3 weeks. We've seen this offensive performance before. The last time they scored 8 runs was in the doubleheader against Cleveland. That time it didn't work out. The Blue Jays did not sustain that success over the long term. They lost 3 of 4 in Cleveland. They ended up going on a losing stretch. They got swept by the Yankees in a 2-game set. Is this any different? Is this offensive success going to carry over into future games, into future series against Los Angeles and whoever comes next?
I hate to be the one that has to say it, but I just don't know. I really do not know. That's at fair. This point. Like,
yeah, I don't know, show.
Exactly. Like, the thing is the offense was good today. You know, obviously 12 hits, that's good. Springer had a hit. Guerrero had 2 hits. Bichette had 2 hits. Kirk actually had 2 hits as the DH today. Like, it was a good offensive performance, but like just yesterday, they had probably one of the most disappointing offensive performances of the season, or at least within the month of May. I don't know. I'd love to see this be the end of this offensive drill, especially for guys like Vladimir Gurio Jr., who might as well call that a moonshot at this point, like that home run that he hit. And obviously Danny Jansen, like, if you can get that offensive production out of your catcher, who really hasn't been an offensive cornerstone of the team, that's even better. Unfortunately, Santiago Espinal did lose his 16-game hitting streak. However, I don't know. I think like the key guys on this lineup, or in this lineup, had good games. Not everybody did. Obviously, Springer, he had a triple, but like, let's be real here, that probably should have been caught, or at least not a triple. But still, regardless, the guys you need to get on base, the guys that you need to drive in runs, they drove in runs, got home runs when they had guys on base. Now we just need to see if it actually is sustainable. And we mentioned Shohei Ohtani. If the Blue Jays lose, which, I mean, I'm not predicting anything right now, but if they don't have a great game against Ohtani, don't panic. Like, you might as well face Kevin Gausman and say that your offense is bad. Well, like, of course it's going to be bad if you're against that good of a pitcher, but I would love to see it kind of be the end of the offensive drought. You look at the LA Angels. To be fair, they're a good team, 26-17, better record than the Blue Jays. It's not a walk in the park. The Cardinals, we said, were similar to them. Game 1 was awful. Game 2, there was a good offensive performance. I would like to see this be the end of the drought, but I think it's going to take a bit of time. And maybe today was the start of that. You get guys finally out of their droughts. Danny Jansen, as I mentioned, Guerrero hitting home runs, even Springer, that bloop triple. A bloop triple is the start of a hitting streak, a game hitting streak. So I'd love to see this be the end of that offensive drought. I think it's possible. It's going to be tough to go and face Shohei Ohtani and a team that is good, but let's be real here. The Blue Jays, if you want to be a good team, you also have to beat the other good teams. And that's kind of where they're at right now. The schedule does, after the Angels series, get a little easier. Actually, no, it doesn't. They face the White Sox right after. I was just scrolling through the schedule. So, okay, it doesn't get easier. Doesn't matter. Not every team has a million aces on their staff. And you're going to have to beat the good teams regardless of where you are in your schedule and really no matter what. So I think it is the end of something. I think we could see a bit of change. They're going to LA, as I mentioned. They have an off day tomorrow. I guarantee you the flight to LA is going to be a lot better than if it happened yesterday or even if they lost today. So I think the morale on this team is a lot better. They have the off day tomorrow to work on some things, just kind of even relax, if you want to call it that. So going into the series 4-gamer against LA, I wouldn't be surprised if we do see a lot better offense. Sucks that all of these games are probably going to be at like 9:30 p.m. So half of the audience is probably going to be sleeping by that point, not be able to see that offensive performance. But I think this is the start of something, primarily because of the approach. Like, look at it. We didn't see the Blue Jays like try to hit a first pitch strike out of the park. What this team waited for their pitch, waited for guys to be on base, and then they did something with it. And it's really all you can ask for. Like I said, bottom of the order producing just as much as the top of the order. I think this is the start of something. It's not going to get easier with LA, with Chicago, but I think at this point, all you can really do is hope. Like the offense, started to turn around. It started to look good at the start of the season too, really, and wasn't really there. But I guess third time's the charm. All we can hope for is a better offensive finish to May, and then hopefully into June, that momentum can carry.
Yeah, I mean, tonight all around, and Jacob, you were talking about it right before we started recording, was they were walking a lot, and to what Mark was saying too, lots of similarities to the Cleveland game or that first game of the doubleheader, because we said the same thing that day was, is this the start of something new? Did the Jays finally get over that hump? Is this the beginning of offensive explosions? Pretty much 30 minutes later, when they played game 2 of that doubleheader, they went right back to normal. And then pretty much since then, it's been the exact same thing. So I'm cautiously optimistic. We knew that it had to start somewhere, of course. And I just feel like they needed a game like this where they put up 8, 9, 10 runs and they don't allow a lot, where just a blowout game. I feel like that's what they need to maybe turn the corner. There's a lot that they have to figure out still. There's a lot that they have to get back on track. I think as much as it is an approach thing and it is them struggling to, I guess, put balls in play when runners are in scoring position, I think this is also really turned into a mind game for them. Like, it's getting in their heads mentally. And I think that, unfortunately for that part, it's kind of going through everyone. They're trying to do too much now, especially because they know that them as a team aren't performing at the highest level. So I think that's getting to their head on that part. And they had to start somewhere, and they had to really regroup as a whole, because again, we talked about this last episode. Every single person in this lineup has struggled with the same thing, which has been the runners in scoring position, which has been just, I guess, the approach and everything like that. So no matter what it is, tonight was a good start, because what we saw the night before, again, I hinted at it right when we started, pretty much the exact same thing, the old kind of, or not the old, but what we've seen throughout the entire series, the entire season from this team. They went 0 for 10 with runners in scoring position. You lose 7-3 to the Cardinals. Of course, you lose from a walk-off grand slam in extra innings. So then you come in tonight not feeling the greatest, but of course, You had a feeling it was going to go okay with Kevin Gausman on the mound. I mean, he was lights out once again. 23 swing and misses on the mound. He was dominant, pitching pretty much into the sixth inning, over 100 pitches. He looked very comfortable. He was striking out the Cardinals when he had to, and that's why I think it was a really good performance tonight from him as well. So that's something that we're used to seeing. The pitching's never been the issue, but you can only imagine I guess how calm or maybe just how different it would be for someone like Gausman to pitch into the sixth inning, knowing that you're up by a huge margin. You're not up by one run. You're handing it off to the bullpen. You're not up by one run. You hand things off to Ross Stripling after Gausman gets out of the game for 2 innings, and then you hand it off to Andrew Vasquez. Both of those guys come into the game. They have a smooth sailing just due to the fact, I mean, obviously they pitched really well. Ross Stripling had 3 strikeouts in 2 innings, but just knowing that you had you had a huge margin for error just because of the amount of runs that you had over the Cardinals, it's definitely reassuring. So this is something, you see it tonight. We know all season they have the potential to do this. It's just the problem has been the lack of consistency. The problem is when they show the signs of this, they revert back to their old shells right afterwards. So that's why cautiously optimistic. And I think honestly, I think the off day tomorrow hurts them, because if I'm them, I'm wanting to get right back out there the next day, continue and build off of this. Now you got to travel to Anaheim. Now you got to face Shohei Ohtani on Thursday night. You guys spoke about that, Jacob. You pretty much teed that up. You don't know exactly what's going to happen from that, just because of how much, I guess, it's just an up and down and unpredictable this offense has been. But tonight in particular was definitely reassuring to see guys like Vladimir Gurio Jr., who's been scuffling this pretty much, I guess, the entire month of May. He drops in the order, he doesn't drop in the order, but he slides to 3 still after a couple times at 2. They kind of try and flip-flop him a few times. Didn't really get going for him. We know that Santiago Espinal began the series and spent the entire series batting out of the 2 spot. So they make a little bit of an adjustment there at the top of the order. And Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is a guy that obviously hasn't been hitting for a ton of power this year because of just his approach, just like everybody else, which has been the exact same issue. He's been walking, but he's been getting on base in the meantime. It pretty much carried over to tonight, and he finally broke out of that, hits a home run over 400 feet, of course, and the Danny Jansen's another one who hits 2 home runs. Those are pretty much the driving factors tonight, but I mean, a lot of guys contributed when you score 8 runs. So it was definitely good to see guys like Vladdy, because Vladdy is the keystone or the corner piece of this offense, and I think it's not even close of a comparison because of him and his impact. We know how good he is when he's on point. And he's one of the deciding factors on this team. So once he gets going, once he turns it around, you like kind of how it might spread towards the rest of the guys in the order. Pretty much George Springer tonight as well at the top of the order. He did really well going 1 for 3. Bo Bichette had a multi-hit game as well. So maybe we're seeing signs. I mean, tonight was a sign, but the question is it sustainable? We said the same thing in Cleveland. It did not happen. We're going to say the same thing again. And we're going to pretty much have an answer for this at the end of the Angels series, but that's a long time away. The Jays have an off day, and then they got to play 4 more games before we get to that point. So it's going to be a tough weekend. The Angels are a very good team. The Cardinals were kind of a team that were just as good as the Jays. So it was a pretty good test for them overall. These last 2 games, we all predicted a split. Clearly they came away with a split, which was good. And it's just the $1 million question is this sustainable going forward?
Yeah. If we knew, we could retire right now and bet our life savings on the Blue Jays. We have no idea what's going to happen, if we're being honest. And you would like to think that this is an indication of what's to come. Who the hell knows? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And to your point, you wish there was not an off day tomorrow. You wish the Blue Jays, right now that they're going to be bumping the tunes. And if they were in Toronto, they would have the nightclub lights on and they'd be partying after a game like today. And their flight to Los Angeles is going to be that exact same mood. But once they get there, I sure hope they don't forget what it's like to play a game like this and win a game like this, because they need to remember that feeling. They need to keep that momentum going, and hopefully having the off day doesn't hurt that at all. Honestly, I don't think it's a big factor, but if you're looking for anything at the margins right now with the Blue Jays, which we know is how they're playing right now, you're looking for any advantage you can get, and you don't want that off day. Good to see Vladdy get that home run tonight. Things don't happen in the Blue Jays lineup if Vladdy isn't going. We can praise Santiago Espinal all we want. We can talk about Bo Bichette's resurgence all we want. But if Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is not hitting, not a whole lot is going to happen in this lineup. And I'm sure we're going to get to this later, but he had a at bat in Monday night's game where the bases were loaded and he swung at the first pitch and just kind of rolled over on a ball, hit a grounder, and it ended the inning. And it was an example of the brutal at bats and brutal approaches he's had of late, where he should not be in that situation, and with his history and with the Blue Jays' history this season, attacking the first pitch he sees. That being said, it was a hanging slider, so maybe he does attack it. But in 99% of circumstances last season with a hanging slider, that ball is going to be 4 rows deep in the outfield, not a grounder to shortstop. So obviously he has his issues, and he's so crucial to this Blue Jays offense. And today's homer and today's performance from him and other guys was encouraging and hopefully a sign that they're getting going. But again, it's a lottery pick. It is flip of a coin right now with the Blue Jays. And to be honest, probably more like 80-20 odds or 90-10 odds that they're not going to sustain this and not going to get going, which I don't even want to think about at this point because we're all kind of riding the high of an 8-run game. But if I'm being honest with myself, I think that's where we're at right now. So I am, yes, very skeptical about this. It's cautious optimism. It is wait and see mode. See what happens on Thursday night, late at night with the LA trip. See what happens Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and see if they can sustain this, because that's going to be the $1 million question. I mentioned the Monday game. We are all riding the high of the Blue Jays win right now, but Monday was brutal in every sense of the word for the Blue Jays. Let's start with what I think everyone agrees was bullpen mismanagement. The Blue Jays pulling David Phelps, who had been largely cruising up until that point, putting in Ryan Baracky. Baracky obviously struggling. He is kind of in love with his slider right now, even though it is not working at all. He throws it a lot. He walks the first guy. He gets to Paul Goldschmidt, and at that point, bases loaded. You know what's going to happen. Paul Goldschmidt hits a walk-off home run for the St. Louis Cardinals. Bullpen mismanagement, yes. I think everyone agrees on that. Is it Charlie Montoyo's fault that the Blue Jays lost that game? Because my answer to that question is no. The Blue Jays went 0 for 10 or 1 for 10 with runners in scoring position. They left 9 guys on base. Manager ain't going to fix that. The Blue Jays bullpen is not built to win games like this. It is not built with the intention of entering the 10th inning tied 3-3. It's just not meant for that. The Blue Jays are a team that is built to be going into the 9th inning, winning 9-3 or 8-1 as they were today, or 5-1 or 6-2. Any score or any margin of victory wider than 1 run or 0 runs. The Blue Jays bullpen is not built to function as it was, and the Blue Jays offense is supposed to be carrying this team. So yeah, Charlie Montoyo made some mistakes. I'll be the first one to admit that, but he's not at fault for that loss. It is 100% on the offense for missing opportunities and not scoring where they need to, namely the 7th inning when they had the bases loaded and Vladimir Gurio Jr. grounded out.
I 100% agree with you. Like, we can blame managers, and don't get me wrong, if a manager makes a bad decision, or, you know, if in any sport, like the coach or the whatever, they can make the bad decision or a move that you should have done or would have done differently. But at the end of the day, there's only so much that the manager can actually do. And we're forgetting it was the 10th inning. So the game was tied after the 9th inning. So you'd gone and played a full game. It was tied. You had your opportunities to take the lead. You had the lead, actually, to be fair. You lost it, which I'm not going to fully blame everybody. But basically, like, it's not like you can say Charlie Montoyo is at fault for the Blue Jays losing in extra innings. The final score obviously doesn't necessarily look like a typical extra inning game. It was 7-3. So, you know, it looks similar to a blowout, but like, it wasn't a blowout. It was just, you know, one hit off of a pitcher in the late innings. I don't blame the manager for that. And To be fair, I don't overly blame the pitchers. Like, yeah, obviously you shouldn't give up a grand slam or any type of hard hit contact in the 10th inning, but we're also forgetting that you do start that inning with a guy on base, and it goes for both teams. Absolutely. I hate this rule. I really think it needs to go away like it, I think originally was planned to, but it's not a regular inning where you can just, in theory, get 3 deep fly ball outs or 3 ground balls or whatever. Or you, in theory, could give up a single. You're basically on high alert from the second you start that inning. And it's not a good way to end the game. But the only reason why it got to that point, or the reason why we had to leave regulation or the normal 9 inning game, was because the offense can either build on that lead or retake that lead once it was gone. And you hate to see this type of things happen. You had a decent start from Jose Barrios, who's actually credited with a quality start, and then 2 of those runs that were left on base were charged to him after they went to score. So, like, it still was a good start from Barrios. Wasn't awful by the offense. Like, if you can win 3-2, that's great, but that's not realistic. And it's just kind of how this game eventually went. And it's not Montoya's fault. And I've been echoing this and saying this for how many years has he been here for, or at least how many years has he been there with the competitiveness? And I think it's been 3 years now, so, or 3 seasons at least. I don't really blame him for any of these, or fully blame him for any of these situations, because it's hard to say that it's the guy not on the field responsible for the on the field play. Obviously, he has a big say in it, or at least is at the forefront of it with everybody behind the scenes. But you cannot leave 9 men on base and then blame the manager for losing in extra innings. It's just not, it can't happen, and it will not happen, at least not from me. I don't think that a lot of people really see that. I think people will just look at it and say, you should have taken this guy out, or you should have done this differently. But at the same time, there's only so much you can do when last season, the one of, if not the best offense was not performing at all, or has not really performed at all this season. That's really where I stand here. Like, it's not Montoya's complete fault. You got to score runs. Like, you can't go into the 9th inning or really the 10th inning or later and have absolutely zero offense out of that team. That it cannot happen. At least it didn't happen in this game. You see guys get on base and you see guys drive those in or drive those runs in. All we can hope is that's sustainable, because, it's funny, right as the Blue Jays lose again, or losing again, more consistency, what are we hearing? It's the Montoya firing comments, or should this guy lose their job, or is it this person's fault that the team's losing? And it is what it is. I think a lot of fans just don't really look into it as much as they really should. And I don't want to call anybody out or just, trash any of the fans, but you can't blame the manager for everything just because a team loses, especially when it's a good offense. It was a tie game. It was 3-3. It was 3-2 going into the later portions of the game. You need to score more runs, especially when you have the opportunities and you have the right players up to take advantage of those opportunities. That's who I think needs to be at fault here. And at least it worked out today on Tuesday night or Wednesday night. Tuesday night. We're recording it just after Wednesday. So Tuesday night it worked. You have the off day. Let's hope that things can work out even a little bit more, and you can take out those high stress situations for the pitchers, which we did see today. It wasn't as brutal as it was in the series opener.
Midnight pods. Let's go.
I love them. And here's the other thing. I disagree with both of you about this. Partially, not fully, because I do partially, and I voice my frustration, both of you. I partially blame Charlie Montoya for yesterday or Monday's game because of what happened. Now, overall, let me make it very clear to both of you before I start. Big picture, it is the offense's fault. And I completely agree with what both of you are saying. But in yesterday's game, I understand what they did. They left a lot of people on base. They left a lot of guys as runners in scoring position. Unfortunately, you didn't have those runs. You don't have the luxury of those runs. And it's pretty much been the story of the season for Montoya and the coaching staff. They've had to pretty much manage throughout 1-run games the entire time. I'm another Charlie Montoya defender. However, when I do think he's wrong for something, I'm going to hold him accountable for it. And I go back to yesterday's game, counting about 3 different times where I disagreed with every single move that he made. And quite frankly, I think if the bullpen was managed better last night, despite the offense leaving those guys on base, because that is a huge issue, and maybe it shouldn't have gotten to that point. I completely agree with that. But unfortunately, that's not what happened. And we were at that point because the offense was bad. So partially on Charlie Montoyo, but basically what I'm trying to say is if Charlie Montoyo manages the bullpen better last night, despite the lack of runs, the Blue Jays win this game, or they win game one. Number one is, first of all, with Jose Barrios, this is 2 starts now where you push him too far into his outing and he runs into trouble pretty much the last outing. Jacob, you're talking about it. It was a good start from Barrios. It wasn't a bad start, but unfortunately, his past 2 outings, the last inning has pretty much been, I guess, not completely ruining his pitching line, but it hasn't been showing, I guess, necessarily truly showing how good he was on the mound. So that's number one for me, is that he was in way too long. And this is twice now that they've pretty much had to learn from this. Number two is it's just a minor thing. I don't understand late in the game. Maybe you guys can help me out with this. I don't understand why Raimel Tapia was pinch hitting for Bradley Zimmer. I'd like you guys to maybe give your thoughts on that after I'm done. I don't understand, even though that didn't have much of an impact on the game. Number three is the Adam Simber thing, or pretty much pulling Jose Barrios for Adam Simber. Yes, the Blue Jays are missing that swing and miss guy. Yes, the Blue Jays bullpen is not a complete piece. However, this is your first guy that you're going to after Jose Barrios. Adam Simber, I don't have the entire exact numbers in front of me, but he is a guy who basically the biggest guy out of the bullpen who allows contact. He's coming on with inherited runners on base. I can't remember exactly where they were, but it led to runs. And that's pretty much how the Jays lost their lead in game one. That's number two for me. Number three is David Phelps coming out for Ryan Baracky. I think that's pretty much the one that you guys can at least agree with me the most on in terms of that. I don't understand why David Phelps was pulled and when he was pulled, because Ryan Baracky comes on, like you guys were talking about, completely expected, I guess, because, well, first of all, you saw him warming up in the bullpen, and then he comes on. It just, you knew the Cardinals were going to react. Okay, so David Phelps comes out, pinch hitter, and Edmundo Sosa replaces Nolan Gorman. You knew the Cardinals were going to retaliate. If you're going a lefty-lefty, you knew they had the last say. They're going to revert back to their righty. And then it turns into a make or break situation because Paul Goldschmidt's on deck. You know that if you get the out, everything's fine. Disaster avoided, situation avoided. But if you don't get him out, look who's on deck. Ryan Baracky versus Paul Goldschmidt. It sets up for failure right before the at-bat even started. I don't think anyone had any good feeling towards that right when the at-bat started. We know what happened after that. I'm just saying, I know the offense needs to contribute. If the offense contributed yesterday when they had the chances to, likely we're never even in the spot where we're talking about this. But again, we need to talk about what happened. The offense wasn't there, and it's been the exact same story all season. The bullpen was the reason why they didn't win yesterday's game. They could have, if it was properly managed, they could have came away with yesterday's game despite having the low offense. And that's what they've done all season. And it's been credit to Charlie Montoyo and his staff all season because they have found ways to win these games where they've been up by 1 run in the 9th inning. And I'm not taking anything away from that because there's been a lot, pretty much all their wins have had to come with similar, I guess, situations and similar leverage points where they've had to make, crucial decisions, questionable decisions, risky decisions, you name it. Just yesterday, in my opinion, it was probably on the lower end of the spectrum in terms of them managing a bullpen this year. And I think it was pretty much very noticeable in my opinion. And I don't blame it all on Charlie Montoyo. That's not what I'm saying. I just think he gets part of the blame. I don't know how much of it he gets compared to the offense, but the offense overall is definitely the bigger issue. It remains the bigger issue going into this weekend, despite what they did tonight. But Charlie Montoyo cannot get a free pass from what happened last night. I still love Charlie Montoyo. I'm sure it's going to be fine throughout the rest of the year. He has hiccups all the time. You can never be perfect. We had the same topic last year when we discussed one of the games in Cleveland in 2021, where we all agreed that Charlie Montoyo probably didn't manage his best game that day. This year, in this particular case for me, I'm at the similar stage of last year when I said the same thing. It's on him partially for this, but in no matter or no reason am I on the fire Montoyo parade. I am not. I am just saying, I think if the bullpen was managed better in this particular game, the Jays come out of this with the sweep. But again, we know what the main issue is, and it's not Charlie Montoyo.
Yeah. Yeah, I To be honest, I think that's a good way of putting it. I think I'd probably place less blame on Charlie than you do by the sounds of it. Like if you were breaking it down into percentages, I might put it at like 15% Charlie, or maybe that's a bit low, maybe 20 or 25% Charlie and 75% offense or 80% offense. Sounds like you might be a little bit higher than that, maybe 30 or 35% Charlie responsibility for that loss. But yeah, bottom line, like he made mistakes, and we've already been over the Phelps Baracky side of things. But you mentioned bringing in Simber. There was two guys on base. Simber's a contact guy. To be honest, I don't take much issue with that. I think in that situation, there's not many other options you have to go to. And in my opinion, outside of Jordan Romano, Adam Simber and maybe Tim Meza, but obviously Meza's on the IL right now. Adam Simber is the highest leverage guy you can use. Whether he pitches to contact or not, he has the lowest ERA out of the bullpen. He has a 1.93 ERA. And you look at the other options the Blue Jays can go to in that situation. The guys that they went through later in that game, Trevor Richards, 4.34 ERA, Julian Merriweather, 6.39 ERA, David Phelps, maybe he's someone you go into in that situation, but he has a 2.87 ERA. And then some of the guys that they didn't use, Jimmy Garcia, 3.94 ERA, Jordan Romano, obviously, I'm going to talk about him later, so we'll save that for now, but Ross Stripling, 4.62 ERA. So to me, none of the alternatives are better, whether he's a contact pitcher or not, whether he's a lefty or righty. To me, Adam Simber is the best guy to go in that situation because he's your highest leverage guy, whether he's contact or not. So I personally don't take much issue with that decision. What I do take issue with is the Jordan Romano choice of not putting him in, or not even just not putting him into the game, but the logic that Charlie Montoyo used for not putting him into the game. So the quote that we got from him after the game on whether he considered using Romano in the tie game in the 10th inning was, quote, "You don't do that on the road. We did it in Houston and it didn't work out." And to me, that is just mind-numbingly stupid. Like, there's no logic behind that. We know analytics. We know baseball is a game of chance. We know past performance doesn't always indicate future success. Because Jordan Romano failed in Houston doesn't mean it's not going to work in St. Louis a month after the fact. And Jordan Romano is your best reliever. Use him where it matters most. And I think it's an entirely separate conversation if we're talking about the fact if Charlie Montoyo comes out after the game and says, we didn't want to put him into a situation where we didn't have the lead or where we already had a guy on base because Jordan Romano likes to come in a clean inning. If he had given any of those excuses, sure, fine, whatever. I give him a pass on that one. This excuse is incredibly dumb. And if that's the actual logic the Blue Jays were using to not use Romano in that situation, I can't understand it at all. So that's what I take the most issue with. And yes, we have to hold Charlie Montoyo accountable for this stuff. We have to talk about this stuff and criticize him for it. Even if it didn't cost the Blue Jays the game, in my opinion, Charlie Montoyo still made a mistake. And we have to consider that. We have to talk about that, even though, again, in my opinion, didn't cost the Blue Jays the game.
Yeah, I mean, holding people accountable is definitely right. I think it's definitely fair. You want to have the best product on the field. You want to have the best offense. You want to have the best defense, pitching, whatever. But you also want people that can properly utilize that. I don't know. To me, the only move that I really disagree with is the one that you just mentioned, the Romano one. I think Adam Simber, regardless of how he pitches, he's one of your best relievers aside from your closer, but you're not going to use your closer in the highest leverage situation if it's in like, what is the inning, the 6th or the 7th with when Simber came out. So I understand that. I don't know. To me, I guess you can even call it New York as well, where Jordan Romano kind of got into a little bit of trouble, although that was a bit of a different situation where he was on the road, kind of blew up in his face. I don't know. To me, I kind of disagree with it still. It is tough though, because you'd also like, it's a tough situation, but I think the reasoning for not making the decision that other people would have made isn't really the best decision. But still, in terms of like who I actually blame for that loss, I got to say I'm probably at most 10% on Montoyo, because like it's tough. You can't not score any runs and then blame your manager for every little thing. Like that would be like saying, "Oh, the pitching, it's the pitching's fault for them losing." Well, to be fair, other than a few batters in the 10th inning, it really was a good pitching performance from that team. It's tough. I think when you're losing, when you're not doing well, it's definitely something a lot of people do is they overanalyze, they look at what's going wrong. I don't know. I'm not very worried about what's going on with Montoyo, and I've never really been overly worried. Like, yeah, we could be critical about him, and we definitely have been. And even earlier in his tenure with the Blue Jays, I probably was too. But I still trust him. I don't think he's going anywhere. To anybody that thinks he's getting fired, cover your ears for this, but he's not getting fired anytime soon. At least not this season. Maybe if it goes horribly wrong. No. When I say maybe, I mean if it goes horribly, horribly wrong, then you'll have to look and at least consider it. But I really doubt it. I like he's here to stay. He doesn't even make awful decisions. Like, yeah, he sometimes makes questionable decisions, but it's also hard to make the right decision and look good when your offense scores 2 runs or 3 runs and just barely does its job. But either way, that game's over. He made the right decisions in the series finale. Let's just hope things like that can continue, because it's what you want to see. You want to see this team do well. You want to see everybody perform well. But when things don't go wrong, I think it definitely is a little bit of a head scratching moment to see these types of decisions.
Yeah, and the Jordan Romano thing is one of the biggest things I didn't even bring up. I completely forgot about it, and I'm glad you introduced it, Mark. But yeah, like I hate that excuse of, it happened in Houston or whatever, or save situation. Like, you use your best reliever in Jordan Romano when you have to use Jordan Romano, and I don't care if it's save situation. I don't care if it's not. I just a head scratcher that he wasn't even warming. I don't know if he was warming up in game 1, but the fact that he wasn't used at all is just another head scratcher for me. And I don't like the reasoning for it. I don't know how he could have defended it. Maybe that's why he reverted back to those words. And, you just instantly think of on the road when you don't use your closer in a non-save situation, you always think of the Buck Showalter, Zach Britton thing with Baltimore years ago. It always comes back to my mind about that. And then he's sitting there in the bullpen and you're saying, okay, we're saving him for a save situation. But the problem is when you're on the road like that, it is not guaranteed that save situation that you're preparing for even comes to fruition and it even happens. So that's why I don't agree with it either. And as much as, that's probably another big reason for what happened, or if you want to hold him accountable, that's definitely one of the big reasons as well to hold him accountable, because of the way it was handled with Jordan Romano. It doesn't make sense to me how you explain that afterward. Like, I understand in Houston it didn't work out, which is true, but like we can't revert or just, I guess, hold everything under one example. Like, everything is different. I don't agree with it whatsoever. And I think it's pretty simple, is that you use your best reliever, and it's Jordan Romano. Like, I don't understand. And, we know that he's been, I guess, up and or off and on in terms of appearances because of the infection he was dealing with. I think it was in the stomach. You want to get him back in a rhythm. He's only pitched, I think, is it once or twice since he's recovered from that infection. So you got to get him in. You can't just, I guess, leave him on the side for a week. And in terms of that, I don't know. I mean, I don't like it. I just go back to Monday night. Everything or multiple things about that game just didn't or rubbed me the wrong way in that way. So I don't understand it. But Jordan Romano pitching late in the game, regardless if it's a save situation or not, Jacob, stop phoning me. I don't understand. Just you use your best reliever when you have to, and it doesn't matter if it's a save situation or not. That's the only thing I'm trying to say, and clearly we're all in agreement with that one. But Charlie Montoyo, again, we're not all on the fire Montoyo bandwagon or anything. It's just that when he does make a slip up like this, you got to hold him accountable for it, and you got to talk about these things. It's just you can't avoid it. I'm sorry, and you got to win games, and it's been frustrating all around. I get it. The offense performs. We don't deal with this. It's just, for me, as much as the offense didn't put anything up or they put up 3 runs, it was enough with proper bullpen management to win the game, but it's not ideal. You don't want to have these situations throughout the year. You want to be up 9-3 like you were talking about, Mark, because that's the way this bullpen truly is built. We know they're probably almost 100% going to add to the bullpen at some point this year. It just seems like something that's going to happen, or they do every year. We know how early they acted last year, and you pretty much assume they're going to get something this year. I don't know how early they will act this year, but we know that's coming down the line as well. And hopefully by that time where they get that swing and miss guy that everyone's been talking about, the offense is truly back. And, you know, we saw a taste of it tonight. And the main question again is this weekend, if they can keep this up.
I'll say it for the record, Jacob also just called me. We're getting a little bit rambunctious on this.
What a troll.
Excuse me.
Honestly, what a troll.
I'm lucky I'm on Do Not Disturb. I got 4 different phone calls from one of you.
It wasn't me. I don't know what to tell you.
I was
613 area code. Not me. Nope. Just leaked my phone number on the pod. Whoops. Okay. We'll get to listener responses. We've had a couple thoughts. One from Ed Johnson. He said, Jays win tonight, but I'm going Goldilocks. Not too cold, not too hot. Let's see at Angels Stadium. I think that's kind of where all of us are at. We had one earlier in this week tweeted at us from No Name. How did Vladdy go 0 for 11 with 1 walk in the series against the Reds, who have the worst pitching staff in all of baseball? And that's pretty much where we're at. But thankfully, Vladdy got going a little bit in today's game. Yeah, I don't know how he put up that performance. It's been frustrating to watch him all year. Hopefully the homer today is a sign of things to come. And then a couple responses on Instagram. Adam Mercer saying the offense in game 2 was amazing. Let's just hope it wasn't a flash in the pan. Pretty much where we're all at right now. And then one from Talks Ready 001. Interesting. The offense shined in game 2 for some reason, which, yeah, it did. It's pretty obvious. Okay, well, let's get to our predictions for this 4-game set against the Los Angeles Angels. The matchups are Ryu versus Ohtani in game 1, and then we have no idea who's pitching for the Angels the rest of the series, but the Blue Jays is going to be Alek Manoah, Yusei Kikuchi, and Jose Barrios. The only other Angels starter that I know is Noah Syndergaard, so maybe he pops up in this series against the Blue Jays. Would be interesting to see a matchup against him. What are you guys going with out of 4? How many do you think the Blue Jays will take?
The Blue Jays have been playing like a 500 team for the last month, so I'm going to say they play 500 here and they split this series. Like I said this earlier, Angels are a darn good team. They're not a pushover anymore, or at least not right now, but it's going to be difficult to take 3 or 4 out of this one.
3 out of 4 for me. Something's got to give. I keep saying it. They got to get going at some point. 500 baseball is great and all, Jacob. But if you want to win the World Series, if you want to win the AL East, if you want to catch the Yankees, you got to take that next level eventually. So that's why you saw a taste of it tonight. The question is, I mean, the last time we said this, it never pretty much translated. Why I'm very optimistic that this may translate a little bit. I'm not saying it's going to be, I guess everything's going to be solved by the end of the weekend, but if you can continue to head into a better direction and take 3 out of 4 from them, it's a massive one of the road trip, because a lot of people were very worried about this road trip based on the way things were going. Hyun-Jin Ryu's been pitching really well since he came back. Alek Manoah is Alek Manoah. You got Yusei Kikuchi as well, who remain optimistic with. And on Sunday, you got Jose Barrios. So with those guys matched up, I'm confident. And I think the only one where I'm really, not really, like just a little worried about would be that Thursday night game with Ohtani on the mound. And I think other than that, just because I guess we don't know who is starting for the Angels throughout the weekend, like you were talking about, Mark, I will right now say 3 out of 4 is my prediction.
3 of 4. Let's go. Let's get it done, Blue Jays. Make it happen. Things are finally turning around, and I'm going to manifest that. And I know I'm going to come here on Sunday and be made fun of, but 3 of 4. It's got to happen eventually. Okay. That's it for today. That's it for this short 2-game set against the St. Louis Cardinals. The Blue Jays will play the Cardinals. I think they're back in Toronto against the Cardinals at some point later this season.
End of July.
End of July. There we go. Until then, as always, you can support our podcast by following us on social media. That's at Section 138 Pod on Twitter. Instagram and TikTok. You can give us all your series thoughts then, and we'll share it on the podcast. You can also give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, which just helps spread the word about what we're doing here. And 4 games against the Los Angeles Angels. We get to watch Shohei Ohtani on Thursday night, and that should be a fun one. Until then, we'll catch you.